lucky enough to be joined by Matt Frank, Ancoris, and Mike Gilmore, one of our heads of data at client server. Matt, I'm going to ask you, obviously, just to maybe do a little intro on what you do, but also explain the envious job title of Chief AI and Innovation Officer, which it's probably the best title I've heard, and how you managed to come up with that.
Thanks, Nick. It was not my idea. I can't take credit for that. But yes, I'm Matt. I'm the Chief AI and Innovation Officer at Ancoris. I have a ridiculous job title. I'm very well aware of that, but it does describe what I do. I'm basically leading our AI side of our business. We are an AI first, AI native business. We work with Google. We're a Google partner. We've partnered with them for a number of years, and they have an incredible kind of story and capability around AI, which we're helping customers solve problems with. So my day-to-day in my job is to basically talk with customers about the problems they're having and help them understand what they can do and how they can take advantage of AI in their context, basically, how they can apply it and cut through the hype.
And I suppose it is such a hot topic at the moment, AI, and I think for one area or another, it's whether people don't know enough about it, think they know too much about it. I feel like they obviously come to you in terms of trying to then be ready as a business or clients. And I'd imagine most of your time is talking about that. When you're talking about AI readiness and using AI to solve a problem, how do you start that kind of conversation with a client?
Everyone's at a different stage of the journey with this stuff. So pretty much universally, most people have figured out this isn't just a fad and it's not going to go away. So most people are already there. Most people have used this stuff kind of in a personal capacity. They've had a go with things like ChatGPT or what was called Google Bard until last week and is now called Gemini Advanced. So they'll have had a go with kind of, sort of the consumer grade generative AI services that are out there. But then different organizations are at different stages of the journey with actually either giving this stuff a go or really adopting it, at scale. So how AI ready you are really varies from organization to organization. There are some fundamentals though that are pretty universal, Nick. There's a lot of AI is based on kind of data that you have in your organization. It's based on how you can interact with that data, how your users and your customers can interact with that data. So being AI ready, there's a lot to do with making sure that all your kind of data is in a good shape, and it's the platforms that it's on are in kind of the right state to be able to take advantage of the AI technology. You don't have to kind of boil the ocean necessarily with all that first before you start doing some stuff with AI, but you need to think about it. At least you need to think about how, if you're going to use this at scale, how you're going to make that work over time. It's pretty easy to get started with this stuff, and we the way that we help customers do that is by building really rapid prototypes to solve we understand what the sort of business problem is that the customer's got, and then we build a rapid prototype in a matter of days to show them the art of the possible, how they might take advantage of AI or generative AI to solve that problem. And then from there, we'll scale that out first to kind of a sort of pilot stage, sort of limited use stage. And then after we've got some feedback on that, we'll scale that out to kind of, production grade service. So you don't have to wait to kind of get all of your platforms absolutely perfect, all of your kind of data perfect, before you start this. But it's something you need to think about and be on top of. The other thing is, a lot of people are either looking at this or already doing it. So how you continue to take advantage of this over time is really important as well. So you might, if you're not doing it, your competitors probably are. So And there's a lot of kind of fear of missing out there that we have to kind of make sure we have to reassure people that it's okay, you're still in time, but if you don't sort of get cracking, you would miss out. So there's a window that's starting to vanish of opportunity.
Yeah.
You need to be in that window, but also what you do with the AI, you need to think about that, because a lot of the stuff that you'll do initially might be kind of things like business process optimization, or more interactive ways of your users or customers interacting with your information or content. So kind of AI-driven chatbots is a classic example of that. These are all great kind of things to do. However, everyone's gonna be doing that at some point. Most people are already starting to try to do that stuff. Yeah. So the big question then is, how do you move away from kind of just doing kind of everyday AI, as Gartner call it, to kind of game-changing AI? And that's not an easy thing. And I don't mean to imply it's easy, but it's something people need to think about, I think, in my opinion.
It also sounds like, for me, because I've spoken to a few people about AI and how they adopt it, that the key element is, one, the amount, but two, the quality of your data and how you input it. I feel like a lot of people probably look at it from the point of view of, like, I need to get on this bandwagon, chuck everything in there, it'll give me the ultimate answer. Yeah. But they don't necessarily ask it the right questions. How important is like getting that first before you make yourself AI ready, I suppose?
That you do need to have sort of the data kind of prepared, if you like, to a degree, but not as much as you might think. So as I said, we are a Google Premier partner, and we work primarily with Google technologies and open source and third-party technologies that work with kind of Google Cloud, Google Workspace, and Google Maps. So on the AI side, Google have lots of AI capabilities that can help you search and understand information. So it could find information for you, it could summarize that information for you, it could extract data from that information for you, it could translate it. There's lots of different kind of applications of this technology that Google give you access to. And it's quite interesting because a lot of what they offer will work on, you might have all your information in document format. So it could be a kind of a PDF or a Word document format even. That's okay. This kind of technology will be able to interact with information in those formats. So yes, you do need to think about this, and for some kind of types of data and some use cases, there is some data engineering work, for want of a better term, that you will need to do. But it's quite surprising how much you can do with quite a little of that. We've got a great example that we did for a customer, and we've anonymized this, so people can see a demo video of it on our website, where you can use generative AI to extract information out of contracts in multiple languages. So generative AI, historically, to do that, we would have had to have used a number of different technologies to achieve that outcome. We would have had to have extracted the text from the documents using either optical character recognition or text recognition software. We would have had to, if the text was in a language different to the language that we wanted it to be in, we would have had to use some translation software to translate the text. We then would have had to have extracted the text using kind of ETL or extract, transform, load, or sometimes ELT, extract, load, transform software, into kind of structured data in a database, and then we would have done some analytics over the top. Actually, what we show in the demo on our site, we take one of Google's large language models, as they're known, generative AI model, that translates the text in the contract. It extracts the text from the contract. It identifies relevant data points within that text, and puts that into into a structured database product, which is called BigQuery on Google Cloud, for us. And it gives users an interface where they can ask questions, a Q&A interface to ask questions about what's in the contract, to summarize the information, and to pull out kind of those relevant data points. So this is all using a small number of generative AI models, whereas historically we would have had to do a load of kind of software integration and technology integration to that outcome. So you use technology components to get to the same outcome, and your time to value can be a lot lower as well. So you're right to call it out, and it is something people do need to think about. But it is surprising how quickly you can get very good results with this stuff without doing too much of that up front.
And leading on to that, because I think it's fascinating, and I think the quicker people embrace it, I think the better off. But I also feel there's probably also a slight fear factor, maybe, that whether if I constantly get asked, is there going to be less opportunity for technologists? Is there going to be less opportunity in the market? And I'd be interested to know what your thoughts on that. Mine have always been, well, technology is always moving, and people either upskill or fall behind. This is just another iteration of that. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of the job market and in tech? Where's the technology, or where's the demand for technologists going to go because of that?
Yeah, it's a question I think is on a lot of people's minds. And if you're a hiring manager, or if you're a candidate, or if you're in the recruitment sector, these are things that you're going to be thinking about, and that's understandable because you see all these kind of sort of hype horror stories about how it's going to AI is potentially going to sort of take away lots of jobs. And there are sectors, if you're a kind of copywriting, or if you're in screenwriting, maybe if you're an actor even potentially, I can see there's risk to your profession. What I'd say though, in terms of kind of the sectors that we work in, and we work across kind of public and private sector, what we see is that this is kind of an assistive additive technology. So our view is that, and my view is that it's predominantly assistive and additive in nature. And what we're seeing across our customers is that's the case. So it's helping people get rid of the low value but high effort work that they need to do, or the toil, as sometimes we call it. Or it's reducing the amount of friction between them and the information they need to understand to do their job effectively. In terms of kind of what it means for skills and tech skills, I think there's a few things. I think that you are still, so if you're an engineer, for example, your skills are still needed. You still need subject matter experts to work with this technology. The reason being, these AI models, the generative AI models, are generative in nature. So that means they're trying to predict what output you're expecting based on the input you put into them, the prompts that you put into them. So as the subject matter expert in your domain, you are the person that, number one, needs to be able to kind of structure those prompts that you put into these models in a way that creates the right input to them to make sure that you get the right output. But number two, given your kind of domain expertise in your role, you are the right person to apply critical thinking and judgment to what these models are outputting as well, to help tune that input and output kind of cycle. So what I see is that, and the engineers that we have working with this technology kind of day in, day out, both for ourselves and with our customers, that's kind of where they get kind of the best kind of bang for the buck in terms of what they're doing and their kind of productivity, but also in terms of their satisfaction in what they're doing, because it's quite a satisfying kind of experience.
Yes,
we'll see. I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations, there's a lot of people writing a lot of code. I think that that kind of role will change over time. A lot of the large tech companies, a lot of the engineers who are responsible for code in those organizations now, they don't really write a lot of code. They write prompts and the models generate code, but those engineers have the right level of expertise and experience to review what the models are generating and kind of troubleshoot that code if there's any kind of bugs, for example, or if it needs to do something differently. So I think roles, in the sort of sectors that we work across, especially on the sort of technology side, they're going to change, but not necessarily go away. I think the other side of it is that the great thing about this technology, or one of the great things, is that you can get people from kind of non-technical backgrounds, so from sort of business domains, if you like, working with it. And where we see kind of customers getting the best bang for the buck in terms of applying this technology is when they combine kind of, for want of a better description, business people and technical people from their organizations together into kind of small kind of cross-functional groups to work with this technology. Because the technical people will typically have an understanding of how the tech operates, and the business people will have an understanding of what it needs to do and can help create the kind of prompts, or do the prompt engineering as it's known, that will make it do that for them.
It's I spoke to, I think he was VP of product at a client of ours, and he said exactly, funny enough, I asked him the same question last week, and he said people like him who've gone through the product lifecycle are going to have to upskill much quicker. Yeah. What it allows them to do is, I think you called it the grunt work, is not, he said they'd come up with an idea with the technologists, have to do loads of documentation, put it through process, and eventually get there, okay, that's not right, do a prototype, where he said it's allowed him to prototype much quicker, effectively get to the answer he wants much quicker and with a better degree of accuracy. And I think he said I said to him, like, well, would you do the same as what you've done knowing AI? And he was like, no, I'm from the business side, and exactly as you said, he says it's brought it closer to the tech side, and you have that kind of hybrid of, you need to understand some stuff, but he said, now I can knock up a prototype without having to ask the technologist to do it for me, which I find incredible.
It is, and I mean, I think you said earlier that it's it's kind of like that kind of pattern of kind of technology. New technology comes along, you need to kind of make sure that your skills and your organization is kind of ready for it. AI readiness. So the other side of AI readiness, another side of it, as well as kind of making sure your data ducks are in a row, so to speak, is making sure your kind of skill sets are right for taking advantage of it. But that's not kind of anything new. I used to kind of, back in the day, I used to do a lot of kind of I worked in kind of software development teams that did a lot of kind of things that were based on extreme programming, as it was known, and sort of early kind of agile software development, and early kind of Scrum. So things like test-driven development and pair programming were kind of sort of and continuous integration were kind of technical techniques that we'd apply to trying to get kind of good kind of quality code that did what the business needed it to do into production in a way that was kind of consistent and with kind of the right level of cost. And this is really another, to me, it's another iteration of that, where in those days, if you had someone, a person from the business or a proxy for that person working really closely with the technical team, so sometimes you used to hear them called product owner, or the customer, working directly with the technical teams, you'd get a good outcome. And I think it's the same again. I think that if the sort of tech side of the orgs work on this in isolation, or the business side of the orgs work on this in isolation, they're not necessarily going to get the right outcome. So there's an organizational side to this and a skills side to it as well in terms of AI readiness. And I would encourage everyone to kind of think about that. And obviously I'd encourage them to come and talk to me about that if they want to. They're very welcome to. And they should talk to client server about any kind of staffing needs they need as well.
I appreciate the plug. That's it. That's what. Actually, so one of the, you said about which we come up a lot against, being AI ready and organizations adopting it. Obviously, from our side, on the recruitment side, most of the clients we have use technical tests as a kind of barrier / level to get in. And I would say now a lot of people using AI to answer those questions. And you might have one client who goes, no, not interested. He's used, they've used AI to answer my question. Should they be like embracing it a bit more? Should they be going, well, they're going to be using this in their day job, so
Yeah, it's the age-old question: is it cheating if you use it? And most kind of hiring managers, I think, at the moment are in that mindset where this candidate has probably used generative AI, some kind of generative AI to help produce their response to this technical test. And I think that I understand why hiring managers, worry about that, because they want people who can actually know what they're doing, rather than people who can sort of, wing it and kind of, blag the test, as it were. I think the key thing, though, is that people need to think about what their technical tests are testing. So I would say that going forwards, people need to think. I would probably think about how I would screen out people who are not using generative AI to help them with technical tests. However, what I would encourage people to think about, if they're going to do that, is to think, right, I need to check whether this person understands, to the right level of detail, the code that this thing has generated. So do they understand what prompts they put in to generate that code? How did they troubleshoot those prompts? How did they engineer them? Did they do any sort of other techniques? You can do things called things like grounding, or give the models examples using prompting to improve the outputs. So what was their process to did they just kind of type something in and get something out and paste that into the tech test, or did they actually approach this in a methodical, structured way to get the outcome? And people also need to try and judge whether the person actually understands what the code that generated is doing as well. But I think from my perspective, it's about hiring managers starting to think about how they approach requiring people to do technical tests a bit differently. There's nothing wrong with trying to get a good understanding of someone's kind of level of expertise and experience. I just think it's a bit like King Canute trying to turn back the tide. You're not going to turn back the tide on this stuff. Especially with kind of people who are kind of younger and earlier stages in their careers. I was the weekend I went to get some food somewhere, and the person who was working in the food place was talking to the mate who was there, and it was obviously their kind of weekend job, and they were studying full time in the week. And they were talking about, well, I did this piece of coursework and I just got ChatGPT to do it. And so I think if we think this is a problem now, if we're worried about people using this technology and it's a bad thing, wait until the kind of next generation come into the workforce, because they're just using it by default in their educational career. So I think personally we have to adapt, because it's not going away, it's not a fad, and all we're going to see is like more and more capability in terms of what it can do and how, and more adoption of it. It's already like well and truly across the kind of public mind share, and the younger generations are just using it naturally. It's not going away, and I think hiring managers need to really kind of adapt, but still try and make sure they assess for those skills and make sure the candidates know what they're doing.
It's an interesting debate, I guess, to have. Is there what's your opinion on the balance, I guess, as well then, Matt, in terms of they can write very good prompts and get the code, but maybe they can't write the code from scratch in the future if these engineers aren't necessarily going to be learning the fundamentals as well as perhaps this generation of coders has?
Yeah, it's a good question, Mike. I think the other kind of dimension is like how people use this technology. So what I've also seen is people kind of just assume it will work, it's right first time, and it will just work. And the way this stuff actually is designed to operate, that's not necessarily going to happen. So we've seen some customers try this stuff out and go, oh well, it generated a load of kind of rubbish, either text or code. And it's the old kind of phrase garbage in, garbage out, or GIGO does apply. So if you don't get the right output first time, you need to kind of improve your inputs and use some of the other techniques I mentioned. There's a whole host of different kind of techniques you can use to get kind of very kind of accurate outputs with these models. But that's a kind of methodical approach you need to take. So I think the other thing that people need to really kind of think about is if their initial experience isn't that great with this technology, that's not necessarily a fault of the technology. It's about how you're applying and using that technology. So this is something else I see quite a lot, is people kind of, they don't have a lot of time. There's something new. They kind of look at it, they give it a sort of, a cursory kind of assessment, and they don't think it's, it's really up to scratch. And I would encourage people, if they're in that situation, to think about things like prompt engineering and look at, ask the models to explain what grounding is or reinforcement learning is, that because it'll explain that, and ask it to explain, if you're not kind of a data scientist or a machine learning expert, ask the model to explain it, but explain it to someone who doesn't come from that background, because the model will then try and create the answer in a way that is easier for you to understand. It will try and meet you. If you tell it where you're at, it should try and meet you, halfway where you're at. So I think that's what this is the other side of this, is that, AI readiness is also, to me, as well as about the data and as well as about the organizational structure and the skills that you have, it's also about how you actually try and apply this stuff as well, like your techniques and your methodologies.
It's interesting you mentioned that as well, because it's something we've been doing with some of our clients as well. We are technical recruiters, but we're never going to know this stuff as in depth as the people that we are hiring. So we try and do our best to technical test people and work with clients to kind of create those questions. But things like ChatGPT and Bard have actually been pretty useful for working with clients and saying, well, what kind of 5 questions should we put together to assess this candidate? I guess it's kind of the same sort of thing, where we're essentially asking it to explain it to us in lay terms to be able to kind of assist the process.
Yeah. Explain it to me in a way that I will understand. And if the more kind of context you give that model, so I have this kind of skills and background and understanding, can you explain it to me in that way? It should try and do that for you. There is this emergent kind of discipline called prompt engineering, and I don't think it's a specific job or role, but I think it's something that people will have to learn how to do in their jobs. And that is all about structuring information in a way that you put into these models that means you get the best possible outcome for you in what you're trying to do. Yeah. So it's a great example, Mike, of where you're trying to kind of not every recruiter comes from a technical background, but you're being asked to source candidates for hiring managers for technical roles, and you need to have an understanding of what's involved in those roles. And I'm sure the hiring managers take time to kind of talk through that with you, but there's nothing like it's that thing of once it's kind of explained to you in a way that it clicks with you and you feel like you're able to explain it back to someone, that's when, for me, that's when I know that I've got a handle on that thing. And this is the other great thing this technology can do, is give people that kind of ability to kind of understand things in the way that they need to understand it.
It's also about the way that I think it's come about because every business wants to be more efficient, more profitable, right? I mean, and I think that, if you look back to when I started recruiting and you're doing more embedded C and, binary stuff, and it's moved with object-oriented programming and libraries that are involved in it. And as you said, this is just another evolution along that curve of solving problems, being more efficient, getting to the answer you want quicker for users.
Yeah.
And computers
absolutely.
Yeah.
It is definitely, but I still believe strongly that people need to understand the first principles behind things. So what we find, our engineers who use some of the kind of code generation and code completion AI technologies, such as like, Gemini for Google Cloud. What we find is that the more experienced engineers find it's a real kind of productivity gain, because they can generate good quality code, or they can instrument kind of test harnesses around code much more quickly than if they were trying to do it all manually. People who are earlier in their careers, though, actually are more reluctant to use this first, because they want to understand the first principles of what they're trying to achieve, which is great. That's fantastic from my perspective, because back to what you're saying there, if you're kind of working in a lower level programming language like C or C++, and you've got to do things like kind of memory management, actually it's really complicated, and it can be very time consuming to generate some code that actually has a business purpose. But you, having done that as the engineer, will understand the nuts and bolts of what the code's doing. Higher level programming languages came about partly because they're more kind of human readable, and code exists for people, not for computers. Because if we just wanted stuff that computers could understand, we'd have just assembly and machine code.
Yeah.
So programming languages are there for people, really. And higher level, part of the reason why higher level languages exist is because they're more human readable, but also they do more of the heavy lifting for you. And then on top of that, you have kind of libraries and frameworks, etc., etc., etc. And all these kind of layers of abstraction take you away from the kind of the bare metal of the computer or the server. And this is another iteration of that.
Yeah.
So you as the either the organization or the hiring manager or the engineer or the candidate, you still have a responsibility to understand what that thing's doing and how it's doing.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away. I think we're in a world now, 2024, and people will talk about servers, but they've probably never actually seen one in real life. I'm old enough and grey enough to have seen what a real kind of computer looks like, but we are very abstracted away from the technology that we use day to day, both in kind of working environments and kind of our kind of personal environments. And I'd say when we're working in technical capacities, it's really important. It's critical, in my opinion, that we kind of know we might not be in the kind of the weeds of kind of memory management every hour of every day, but we should have a good grounding and a good understanding. And actually, if you don't have that, these models can be really good at helping you understand that stuff, because you can ask it, tell me what memory management is and why that's important. And I don't have to do that in my day job, but I know that people used to have to do that when they worked in certain programming languages.
Yeah.
Why is that important? It's about the why of these things, not necessarily knowing exactly how to do it or doing it every day, I think.
I think what's interesting as well, what comes from you, you're genuinely passionate about it as well, which I love, in terms of when you're talking to someone about, someone that's actually adopted it, taken on board and like running with it, versus, well, I think I should probably know about it. You can tell you're genuinely passionate about it as well.
Yeah, it's it was I've been at Ancoris for over 2 years now, and I used to run our Google Cloud and Google Workspace businesses, and then last year kind of moved into this role with the ridiculous job title, we did that because we could see the way that the market was moving, and from our perspective, Google had the best technology and the best capabilities. OpenAI undoubtedly had the public mind share with ChatGPT and still does, and Microsoft were really great at kind of making a very significant early investment in them, and that's brilliant that they did that. But Google, the T in ChatGPT stands for transformer, and Google, a team at Google created the transformer model in 2017. Well, they published the first paper on it in 2017. So a lot of this technology was pioneered at Google. All of their research for it and development for it is in-house. They also, they're part of Google, are part of Alphabet, and within Alphabet you also have DeepMind, who are headquartered in the UK. So all of that capability is internal to Google. Microsoft, they've got some amazing capabilities thanks to OpenAI, but that's they're reliant on a third party for that capability. So our kind of position, and why, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate, especially about the Google sort of AI technology, is because it's something that they've developed over a number of years. The other reason is because they have really clear, strong kind of ethics and responsibility principles and approaches to it. So in terms of how they create it, how they deploy it, and how they let kind of people use it as well. And I think that's really, really important, because there's a lot of kind of doubt. There's a huge upside to the adoption of this technology across industry sectors and across society. There's also risk and downside, and what I like about doing this stuff at Google is that they take that stuff really, really seriously. I mean, that's not to say that organizations like Microsoft or other companies don't take it seriously. I just know from personal experience that Google really do. But yeah, I'm really, it's great. I think, what I always say is I've never in my career until now accepted a role where the job title has a specific technology in the title. I've always tried to remain kind of agnostic of specific technologies in terms of kind of what your job title says you do. Maybe cloud. I've had jobs before where the word cloud's been in. That's probably the closest I've got. But this is the first job where there is a specific technology in the job title, AI, and that's intentional. This stuff's not going away. It's only going to get bigger and better and be more widely used. And it's amazing to be kind of somewhat at the forefront of that. To be honest, Nick, it's brilliant. It's a real privilege.
It's amazing, and I think, as you said, what I think will be amazing will be, and maybe I'm certainly pinning you here, maybe having another chat in 12 months' time, is what I'm looking forward to seeing is that like evolution of what everyone thinks today and how everyone thinks today it's going to be implemented, used, partnered with their business. Does that come to fruition, or does it go some other, or move into a different direction? Because it is, there's so many options to it.
Well, if you think about, we're recording this in February 2024, and you think about February 2023, and where things are at with this technology, versus where it's at now, the kind of the adoption of it and the increase in capability it's a bit of a cliche, but it is hockey sticking, and it is trending towards being exponential. So I have no idea. We do a lot of kind of thinking about like where we're going to be in what the trends for 2024 and where we're going to be in 12 months time. And there's we have kind of our own kind of webinar on that about that topic, because things like miniaturization are going to come into play. Sustainability is going to be an important factor. There's going to be more kind of human AI kind of cooperation. Once we get kind of AI properly into robots, that's going to be, who knows where that's going to go. And kind of really out there, Gethin, who's one of our amazing engineers, kind of called it kind of translating kind of animal noises into kind of language, so you could speak to kind of dogs or whales. There's all sorts of stuff that might happen. And I think it'll be amazing, in another 12 months, sort of February 2025, to kind of, to look back on where this has gone. I didn't expect kind of last week to see kind of what Google released with kind of the latest versions of Gemini, where you can upload kind of, an hour of video, or, thousands of pages, hundreds of pages of documents, or thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of lines of code, and you can interact with that stuff in text and in images. And I didn't expect OpenAI to kind of to create a tool that can generate kind of almost kind of photorealistic video. We're really lucky that AI still struggles to sort of to generate kind of fingers and hands and feet and toes and things, because we can still kind of figure out, distinguish what's real from what's not. But if you'd asked me kind of 12 months ago, would we have those sort of things kind of fairly widely available, I wouldn't have been able to kind of say that. I would have said that something's coming. But so I can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Well, maybe I can ask you to commit to doing like a February 2025, and we can discuss where we've come about.
Yeah, it might not be me. It might be my kind of robot avatar.
Actually, we haven't even touched on sort of stuff like governance or regulating it. I mean, there's so many things. But I mean, I'm also conscious we've kept you for quite a while, and really appreciate you giving us your time and chatting about those things. We could talk for hours.
Yeah, no problem at all. And you're right. There is a whole other side to this, and that's maybe a conversation for another time. It is, governance and regulation is also really important. But it's about trying to have that balance between making sure people can innovate with the technology, but do it in a way that's kind of beneficial for themselves, their organisation, and for it, and isn't detrimental to everyone. So there's always a bit of a balance with this sort of stuff. But yeah, it's been a pleasure though, Nick, and and thanks for having me on. And I'll be happy to come back anytime.
No, I really appreciate it. It's amazing, and I find it personally very fascinating. So, from us, really appreciate your time, Matt, and hope for our next episode as well. And we'll get you back on 2025 for round 2 of where AI has gone, especially with you and Ancoris. Hopefully, it's you and not your sort of AI.
Yeah. And if the AI's generated the questions for you, great. All I'll be interested in is like, what did you use to generate the questions? That's really interesting.
But okay, it'll be fascinating. But we really appreciate it, and have a good day, and we'll speak to you again soon.
No worries at all. Cheers, Nick. Cheers, Mike.